The dust settled over the main street of Fort Bowie, Arizona Territory, as Joanna Redfield stumbled from the stagecoach with blood staining her torn calico dress and accusations following her like vultures circling carrion. She had killed a man in Tombstone, or so the whispers claimed, and now every merchant, every respectable housewife, every God-fearing citizen wanted her gone before sunrise. The year was 1878, and justice in these parts moved swifter than a rattlesnake's strike, especially when aimed at a woman who dared step outside the narrow confines society had built for her. Joanna's legs trembled as she touched solid ground after 3 days of bone-rattling travel. Her auburn hair hung loose from its pins, wild around her pale face, and her green eyes held the hollow look of someone who had seen too much in too short a time. She carried nothing but a worn carpetbag and the clothes on her back. The bloodstains belonged to Thomas Garrett, a cattle baron's son who had thought her refusal meant nothing more than a woman's playful resistance. She had proved him wrong with the letter opener she had grabbed from the desk in his father's study. The stage-coach driver, a grizzled man named Pete who had made this run for 20 years, climbed down from his perch with barely concealed disgust. "This is as far as you go, miss. I cannot take you any further even if you had the coin." "I understand," Joanna said quietly, though she understood nothing except that the world had become a hostile place overnight. 3 days ago she had been a governess in a respectable household. Now she was a murderess, though the law in Tombstone had called it self-defense and let her go. The court of public opinion had been less forgiving. Fort Bowie sprawled before her in the harsh afternoon sun, a collection of adobe buildings, wooden storefronts, and dusty streets that seemed to shimmer in the heat. The military fort itself sat on higher ground to the east, established to protect travelers through Apache Pass. The civilian settlement had grown up around it like moss on a stone, feeding off the soldiers' need for supplies, entertainment, and the illusion of civilization in this untamed land. Joanna moved toward the nearest building, which advertised itself as the Desert Rose Hotel. Her boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each step. Behind her, she heard the stagecoach pull away, Pete eager to distance himself from the trouble she represented. Around her, she felt eyes watching from windows and doorways. News traveled faster than any stagecoach in the Arizona Territory. The hotel clerk, a pinch-faced woman in her 50s, looked up from her ledger as Joanna entered. Recognition flickered across her features almost immediately. "We have no rooms available. I can see empty key hooks behind you," Joanna said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I said we have no rooms, not for the likes of you." The woman's mouth pursed like she had bitten into something sour. "Mrs. Henderson sent a telegram ahead. Warned us about what happened in Tombstone." Joanna closed her eyes briefly. Mrs. Henderson, her former employer, the woman whose son had attacked her. Of course she would have sent word ahead to every town along the route, poisoning any chance Joanna might have had at sanctuary. "I defended myself," Joanna said. "The court declared me innocent." "The court might have, but decent folk know better. A woman alone in a man's study at night. You brought it on yourself, and then you killed that poor boy when he tried to give you what you were clearly asking for." The clerk's words dripped with venom disguised as righteousness. Joanna felt something crack inside her chest, but she refused to let tears fall. She had cried enough over the past 3 days. "Where else might I find lodging?" "Nowhere in Fort Bowie. Mayor Thornton has already called a meeting. They will be posting notices within the hour. You are to be gone by sunrise tomorrow, or they will arrest you for vagrancy and disturbing the peace." The irony would have been amusing if it were not so devastating. She had been cleared of one crime only to be convicted of the crime of existing while female and unprotected. Joanna turned without another word and walked back into the blazing heat. She wandered the main street, trying each establishment in turn. The general store refused her business. The restaurant would not serve her. Even the church, when she climbed its whitewashed steps, proved closed to her. Reverend Michaels met her at the door with sympathy in his eyes but steel in his words. "I am sorry, miss, but I have a congregation to think about. The good women of this town would never forgive me for harboring someone of your reputation." "My reputation," Joanna repeated hollowly. "I was attacked. I defended myself. When did that become a sin?" The Reverend looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "The world is not always just. Perhaps you might try Santa Fe or even California. Somewhere you could start fresh where no one knows your story. With what money? With what references? I have nothing but what I carry, and apparently not even the right to exist in this town for longer than one night." Bitterness leaked through despite her best efforts to contain it. "I will pray for you," the Reverend offered weakly. Joanna descended the church steps feeling more alone than she ever had in her 22 years of life. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. She found a bench outside the closed mercantile and sat down, her carpetbag at her feet, and tried to formulate some sort of plan. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. A man rode down the main street on a buckskin horse that moved with the easy grace of an animal well-trained and well-loved. The rider sat tall in his saddle, wearing the practical clothing of a working cowman rather than the fancy dress of a dandy. His hat, stained with sweat and dust, shaded a face that looked to be in his mid-20s. He had strong features, sun-bronzed skin, and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar. His eyes, a striking blue-gray that reminded Joanna of storm clouds, scanned the street with the awareness of a man accustomed to watching for danger. He slowed his horse as he approached, his gaze settling on Joanna with unmistakable curiosity. She looked away, not wanting to invite conversation or the inevitable rejection that would follow once he learned who she was. The rider dismounted with fluid ease, looping his horse's reins around the hitching post. His boots struck the wooden boardwalk with solid thuds as he approached. "Afternoon, miss. You look like you could use some help." "I doubt you could provide the kind of help I need," Joanna said, keeping her eyes fixed on the mountains in the distance. "Unless you can change an entire town's mind about me. That depends on what the town thinks and whether they have good reason for thinking it." He did not move away, which surprised her. Most men, once they sensed trouble, scattered like tumbleweeds in a strong wind. Joanna finally looked up at him. Up close, she could see the kindness in his eyes despite the wariness that came from living in hard country. "I am Joanna Redfield. If you have not heard the name yet, you will soon enough. The town wants me gone by morning. They think I am a murderess and a woman of loose morals, though I am neither." "Isaac Yates," he said, touching the brim of his hat in a gesture of respect that felt like water to a woman dying of thirst. "I own a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Came into town for supplies. As for what I have heard, I generally prefer to form my own opinions rather than swallow whatever gossip the rumor mill churns out." "You are a rare man, then." Joanna tried to keep the hope from her voice, knowing it would likely be crushed soon enough. Isaac settled onto the bench beside her, though he left a respectable distance between them. "Why do they want you gone? Tell me the truth, and I will tell you whether I believe you." So Joanna told him. She explained about her position in the Henderson household in Tombstone, about how young Thomas Henderson had developed an unwanted fixation on her, about how she had rejected his advances repeatedly and professionally. She told him about the night 2 weeks ago when he had cornered her in his father's study, drunk and insistent, about how he had torn her dress and pushed her against the desk. She described grabbing the letter opener, meaning only to frighten him off, but he had lunged at her and the blade had found his throat. "The court investigated," Joanna said, her voice steady though her hands trembled in her lap. 3 servants testified that Thomas had a reputation for forcing himself on the help. The doctor confirmed the bruises on my arms and neck were fresh, consistent with my story. The judge ruled it self-defense and released me. But Mrs. Henderson did not accept that verdict, Isaac said. She lost her only son. I cannot blame her for wanting someone to pay for that loss, even if the person responsible was Thomas himself. Joanna twisted her hands together. She has sent telegrams to every town between Tombstone and Santa Fe. She has money and influence. I have neither. So here I sit, with nowhere to go and sunrise coming whether I am ready for it or not. Isaac was quiet for a long moment, his eyes studying her face with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow did not. "You speak like an educated woman." "My father was a schoolteacher before he died. My mother took in sewing until consumption took her when I was 16. I have been working as a governess ever since, teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, and proper comportment to the children of wealthy families." A bitter smile crossed her lips. "Ironic that I am now considered too improper to teach anyone anything." "What will you do?" Joanna shrugged, the gesture feeling heavy. "Walk, I suppose. Head toward the next town and hope I get far enough before the sun rises that they do not come after me. Eventually I will reach somewhere Mrs. Henderson's reach does not extend. Perhaps California, as the Reverend suggested." "That is a death sentence," Isaac said bluntly. "The desert between here and the next settlement is not forgiving, especially to someone traveling alone on foot without proper supplies. The heat will kill you during the day, the cold at night, and if those do not, the wildlife or raiders will." "Then what would you suggest?" Joanna asked, hearing the sharp edge of despair in her own voice. "I have no money for a horse or a stage coach ticket. I have no friends or family to turn to. The only choices I see are walk or wait to be arrested for the crime of having nowhere else to be." Isaac stood abruptly, his jaw set in a way that suggested he had made a decision. "There is another choice." Before Joanna could ask what he meant, Mayor Thornton appeared from the direction of the town hall, flanked by 2 other men Joanna did not recognize. The mayor was a portly man with impressive mutton chops, and the self-important air of someone who enjoyed the small power his position afforded him. "Miss Redfield," Thornton said, his voice carrying the false warmth of a politician, "I was hoping to speak with you before nightfall. As you have no doubt heard, the citizens of Fort Bowie have decided that your presence here is not conducive to the moral fiber of our community. We have arranged a town meeting for this evening, and the consensus is clear. You must leave by dawn." "On what grounds?" Isaac asked, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "Last I checked, Fort Bowie was not a fiefdom where you can banish people according to your whims." Thornton's eyes narrowed as he recognized Isaac. "Mr. Yates, this is a town matter, not ranch business. I suggest you collect your supplies and head home." "I am a taxpayer in this town, Mayor. I have as much right to speak on town matters as anyone else." Isaac crossed his arms. "You said there was a town meeting. When and where?" 7 o'clock at the town hall. Not that it will change anything. The decision has been made." Thornton turned back to Joanna. "I suggest you use the remaining hours to prepare for your departure, miss. If you are still within town limits come sunrise, you will be arrested." "For what crime?" Joanna demanded, finding her voice again. Vagrancy, disturbing the peace, suspicion of immoral conduct. I am sure we can find something that fits. Thornton smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. This is for your own good as much as ours. A woman with your reputation will only invite trouble. Better you move along before that trouble lands on our doorstep. Isaac stepped between Thornton and Joanna, his posture protective. She stays here, under my protection now. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Joanna's heart lurched in her chest. The two men flanking Thornton looked startled, and the mayor himself seemed momentarily speechless. "What did you say?" Thornton finally managed. "I said she stays, under my protection." Isaac's voice remained level, but there was no mistaking the certainty in it. "Miss Redfield will be coming to my ranch as my employee. I need someone to manage my household and keep my books. She is educated, capable, and accused of nothing except defending herself against a man who thought he could take what was not offered." "The telegram from Tombstone suggests otherwise," one of Thornton's companions said. "The telegram came from a grieving mother lashing out at the only target available," Isaac countered. "The court in Tombstone cleared Miss Redfield. That is the only legal opinion that matters. Everything else is gossip, and I will not see a woman's life ruined over gossip." Thornton's face reddened. "You cannot simply declare someone under your protection like you are some medieval lord, Yates. The town has spoken. The town can speak all it wants, but unless you plan to charge Miss Redfield with an actual crime, you have no authority to force her to leave. And since she will be employed at my ranch, which is outside town limits, your jurisdiction ends at the boundary markers anyway." Isaac's logic was unassailable, and the mayor knew it. "You would risk your reputation for a woman you do not even know?" Thornton asked. "My reputation can withstand associating with someone whose only crime was fighting back against a man who attacked her. Can yours withstand being known as the mayor who drove an innocent woman into the desert to die?" Isaac did not raise his voice, but his words carried the weight of a challenge. Joanna watched this exchange with a mixture of shock and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Why was this stranger defending her? What did he gain from making himself a target of the town's disapproval? Thornton glared at Isaac for a long moment, then turned his glare on Joanna. "This is not over. If there is any trouble, any hint of impropriety or scandal, I will see you run out of the territory entirely." "There will be no trouble," Isaac said firmly. "Miss Redfield will be living in my housekeeper's quarters, working as my employee, and conducting herself with the propriety she has always maintained. If you or anyone else suggests otherwise, they will answer to me." The threat, though unspoken, was clear. Isaac might not be a gunfighter or an outlaw, but he was a rancher in hard country, which meant he knew how to handle himself. Thornton evidently decided that pressing the issue was not worth the potential consequences. With a final disapproving grunt, he turned and stalked away, his companions trailing behind. Joanna released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Why did you do that?" Isaac looked down at her, and for the first time, she saw a hint of uncertainty in his expression. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because I have a sister back in Kansas, and I would hope that if she were ever in your position, someone would help her instead of casting her out to die." He paused. "And because I meant what I said. I do need someone to help manage the ranch house and keep the accounts. My previous housekeeper left 3 months ago to live with her daughter in Tucson, and I have been managing poorly on my own." "I do not know anything about ranching," Joanna admitted. "You do not need to. I have 3 hands who manage the cattle and horses. What I need is someone who can cook decent meals, keep the house from falling into complete disorder, manage the household accounts, and perhaps teach me how to write business correspondence that does not sound like it was scratched out by a half-literate cowhand. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Based on how you speak, I would guess you can handle those tasks. I can, Joanna said slowly. But you understand what you are taking on, do not you? That woman, Mrs. Henderson, will not stop her campaign against me just because I have found employment. She will send more letters, spread more rumors. You will be painted with the same brush simply for helping me. Let her try, Isaac said with a shrug. I have lived in the Arizona Territory for 5 years now, built my ranch from nothing, survived drought and Apache raids and every other hardship this land could throw at me. I am not particularly worried about what some wealthy woman in Tombstone thinks of my choices. Joanna felt tears prick her eyes, the first tears of relief rather than despair that she had experienced in weeks. I do not know how to thank you. Thank me by being as competent as I think you are and making sure I do not starve or go bankrupt from poor bookkeeping. Isaac offered his hand to help her stand. We should head to the general store before it closes. You will need supplies, and I still need to pick up the items I came to town for. The general store refused to serve me earlier, Joanna reminded him. They will serve you when you are with me, Isaac said with quiet confidence. He was right. When they entered the general store together, the proprietor's initial hostility melted into grudging civility once Isaac made it clear that Joanna was his employee, and that he expected her to be treated with respect. Joanna selected basic necessities, practical items she would need for her new position, while Isaac gathered flour, sugar, coffee, and various other supplies. As they worked, Joanna became aware of the curious glances from other shoppers, the whispered conversations that stopped when she drew near. Fort Bowie was a small town, and news of Isaac's confrontation with the mayor would have spread like wildfire. She kept her head high, refusing to show the shame they clearly expected to see. At the counter, Isaac paid for everything without comment. When Joanna tried to protest that she would work off the debt of her personal items, he waved her off. Consider it an advance on your wages. We can settle accounts once you have been working for a month or two, and we both know if the arrangement is going to work out. They loaded the supplies into the back of a wagon that had been waiting outside the livery, presumably Isaac's. He tied his buckskin horse to the back, then helped Joanna onto the bench seat with a gentlemanly courtesy that felt almost foreign after the treatment she had received everywhere else. As they rolled out of Fort Bowie, Joanna watched the town recede behind them with a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. The sun had sunk lower, painting the desert in shades of amber and rose. The air was beginning to cool, though the day's heat still radiated from the earth. "Tell me about your ranch," Joanna said, partly to fill the silence and partly because she genuinely wanted to know what she was getting herself into. Isaac seemed to relax slightly, settling into his seat as the horses pulled the wagon north along a well-worn track. It is called the Yates Ranch, for lack of more creative naming. About 2,000 acres of grazing land with decent water access from a spring-fed creek. I run mostly cattle with a few horses. Nothing fancy, but enough to make a living if you are careful and do not spend foolishly. How did you come to own it? Worked as a ranch hand for years, saved every penny I could, and bought the land from a widower who wanted to move back east to be near his grandchildren. That was 5 years ago. I was 21 and thought I knew everything. He smiled at the memory. The land taught me differently pretty quickly. You are 26 then, Joanna asked, doing the mathematics. Last month, you. 22, I will be 23 in October. They fell into a comfortable silence for a while, the wagon wheels creaking rhythmically, and the horses' hooves clopping against the packed earth. Joanna studied the landscape around them with new eyes. The desert was harsh, certainly, but there was a stark beauty to it that she had not noticed while she was consumed with fear and desperation. Saguaro cacti stood like sentinels against the darkening sky. Small lizards darted across rocks still warm from the sun. In the distance, the mountains rose in layers of purple and blue. "What should I expect at the ranch?" Joanna finally asked. "You mentioned 3 ranch hands. Miguel, Tom, and a young fellow named Danny, all decent men who keep to themselves mostly. They bunk in a separate building near the barn, so you will not need to worry about privacy. The main house has 4 rooms. My bedroom, a room that serves as both kitchen and living area, a small storage room, and a separate room that was the housekeeper's quarters. That will be yours. It is not much, but it has a real bed, a washstand, and a window that catches the morning light." "It sounds wonderful," Joanna said honestly. After contemplating a night in the desert with no shelter at all, a room of her own sounded like a luxury beyond measure. Isaac glanced at her, and she caught something in his expression that she could not quite name. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe cautious optimism. "I should warn you, the place is a mess. I have been doing my own cooking, which means a lot of beans and bacon and not much variety. The accounts are scattered across 3 different ledgers with no real system, and I have been putting off repairs on things that needed fixing months ago because I never seem to have time." "Then it is fortunate you hired someone to help," Joanna said. "I am not afraid of hard work, Mr. Yates." "Isaac," he corrected. "Out here we do not stand much on formality. You can call me Isaac. Then you should call me Joanna." "Joanna," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. She liked the way he said it, with a gentle respect that made it sound less like the name of a disgraced governess, and more like the name of a person worthy of dignity. Night had fully fallen by the time they reached the Yates ranch. Joanna could make out the shapes of buildings in the moonlight. A main house built of adobe with a wooden porch, a barn, a couple of smaller outbuildings. It looked solid and well-maintained despite Isaac's protestations about needed repairs. A dog barked as they approached, and moments later, a man emerged from one of the outbuildings carrying a lantern. He was older, maybe in his 40s, with a weathered face and gray streaking his dark hair. "About time you got back, boss. Was starting to think maybe you ran into trouble in town." The man's voice carried a slight Spanish accent, marking him as Miguel. "No trouble, just longer than expected." Isaac set the brake on the wagon and jumped down, then moved to help Joanna. "Miguel, this is Joanna Redfield. She is going to be managing the house and accounts." "Joanna, Miguel Rodriguez, my foreman and the man who actually keeps this place running despite my best efforts to ruin it." Miguel's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but he recovered quickly and touched his hat in greeting. "Miss Redfield, welcome to the Yates Ranch." "Thank you," Joanna said, grateful for the simple courtesy. "We will get the wagon unloaded tomorrow," Isaac said. "For now, just help me get the perishables into the house. Joanna, come inside and I will show you where everything is." The interior of the house was as Isaac had described, a large room that served as both kitchen and living space, with a fireplace, a table, several chairs, and shelves lined with supplies. A doorway led to what must be Isaac's bedroom, and another to the storage room. The third door stood slightly ajar, revealing the housekeeper's quarters. Isaac lit several lamps, bathing the room in warm light. Joanna could see what he meant about the mess. Papers were scattered across the table, dirty dishes sat stacked near the wash basin, and a layer of dust covered most surfaces. It was the mess of a man living alone, doing his best but clearly overwhelmed by domestic tasks. "Your room is through here," Isaac said, leading her to the third door. He pushed it fully open, revealing a small but clean space. True to his word, there was a proper bed with a quilt, a washstand with a mirror, a chest of drawers, and a window with faded curtains. Mrs. Patterson, my previous housekeeper, kept it nice. I have not touched it since she left except to dust occasionally. "It is perfect," Joanna said, setting her carpetbag on the bed. The relief of having a safe place to sleep, a roof over her head, and a locked door between herself and the world felt almost overwhelming. There is water in the pitcher on the washstand. Privy is out back, 30 paces due south from the kitchen door. You cannot miss it. Isaac hovered in the doorway, looking uncertain. "I expect you are exhausted. We can talk about duties and wages and all the practical matters tomorrow. For tonight, just rest." "Isaac," Joanna said, making him pause as he turned to leave. "Thank you, truly. You saved my life today." He shook his head. "I offered you a job, that is all. You did far more than that, and we both know it." Joanna met his eyes. "I will not forget what you did, or what it cost you." "It cost me nothing worth keeping," Isaac said quietly. "The good opinion of people who would condemn a woman for defending herself is not something I value. Sleep well, Joanna." After he left, closing the door softly behind him, Joanna sank onto the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. But these tears were different from the ones she had shed over the past weeks. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of the strange, overwhelming feeling that comes when kindness appears from an unexpected source. She washed her face in the basin, changed into her nightdress, and crawled under the quilt. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the black sky in profusion, more stars than she had ever seen in Tombstone with its streetlights and buildings. The desert night was alive with sound, insects chirping, the distant call of a coyote, the soft lowing of cattle. For the first time in weeks, Joanna fell asleep feeling something other than fear. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment, disoriented, she could not remember where she was. Then memory returned, and with it, a cautious sense of hope. She dressed quickly in one of her simpler dresses, pinned her hair into a neat bun, and emerged from her room. Isaac stood at the stove, attempting to fry eggs. The coffee smelled good, but the eggs looked questionable. He glanced up as she entered, a rueful expression crossing his face. "I was trying to make breakfast before you woke up. Clearly, my cooking has not improved overnight." "Let me," Joanna said, moving to the stove. She examined the eggs, decided they were salvageable, and quickly finished preparing them along with some bacon she found in the cold box. "Do you have any bread? I have flour and yeast if you know how to make it." "I do." Joanna set the eggs and bacon on plates and carried them to the table. "I will start a batch after breakfast. It will need to rise, but we can have fresh bread by this evening." They ate in companionable silence. Joanna found herself studying Isaac in the morning light. He had strong, honest features, the kind of face that reflected the character of the man behind it. His hands, wrapped around his coffee cup, were calloused from hard work but clean. Everything about him spoke of a man who took pride in his labor but did not put on airs. "What are your normal wages?" Joanna asked, getting to the practical matters he had mentioned the night before. Isaac considered. "Mrs. Patterson received $20 a month plus room and board." "Does that seem fair to you?" It was more than fair. Joanna had earned $18 a month as a governess, and that had been considered generous. "Very fair." "Good. As for duties, I am not looking for someone to wait on me hand and foot. I need help managing the house, keeping it clean and organized, cooking meals that do not involve burning everything, and sorting through the disaster I have made of my accounts." He paused. I also need to start maintaining better business correspondence. I have a buyer in Tucson who I need to write to regularly, and my letters are barely literate. I can help with all of that, Joanna assured him. When would you like me to start? Whenever you feel ready. Isaac drained his coffee. I need to ride out with Miguel this morning to check on the herd in the north pasture. We should be back by mid-afternoon. That will give you time to settle in and get a sense of what needs doing. After Isaac left, Joanna stood in the middle of the main room and assessed the task before her. She started with the dishes, washing everything and putting it away in neat stacks. Then she tackled the dust, the scattered papers which she organized into careful piles to be sorted through later, the floors which she swept until they were free of tracked in dirt. The work felt good. It felt normal. For a few hours, she could lose herself in the simple rhythm of domestic tasks and forget that just yesterday she had been homeless and hunted. She found the ingredients for bread and mixed the dough, kneading it until her arms ached in a satisfying way. While it rose, she explored the storage room, taking inventory of supplies and making mental notes of what was running low. Then she turned her attention to the accounts. Isaac had not been exaggerating. 3 different ledgers contained entries in no particular order, some dated, some not, recording expenses and income with no clear system. Joanna found paper and pen and began the laborious process of creating a master ledger, organizing everything by date and category. She was deep in the work when she heard horses approaching. Glancing out the window, she saw Isaac and Miguel returning, but there was a third horse with them, carrying a rider she did not recognize. Her heart sank. Had the mayor decided to press charges after all? Had someone come from Tombstone? The 3 men dismounted, and Joanna got her first clear look at the newcomer. He was young, maybe 19 or 20, with sandy hair and a slight build. He looked nervous. Joanna stepped onto the porch as they approached. Isaac saw her and shook his head slightly, a gesture that seemed meant to reassure. "Joanna, this is Danny, one of my hands. Danny, Miss Redfield." The young man bobbed his head awkwardly. "Pleased to meet you, miss. I heard you were coming to work here." "News travels fast," Joanna said carefully. "Danny rode into town this morning for some supplies we forgot yesterday," Isaac explained. "He heard some talk and thought I should know about it." Joanna's stomach tightened. "What kind of talk?" Danny looked at Isaac, who nodded permission for him to continue. "There are some folks not happy about Mr. Yates bringing you here. Mayor Thornton is one of them. He was at the general store this morning, saying you are going to bring trouble down on the whole area." "What kind of trouble?" Joanna asked. "He claims that Mrs. Henderson in Tombstone has connections to some rough characters, that she might hire men to come after you, and that if there is gunplay at the Yates ranch, it could spill over and hurt innocent people." Danny twisted his hat in his hands. "I do not believe it myself, miss. Just thought Mr. Yates should know what is being said." Isaac's jaw tightened. "That is ridiculous. Mrs. Henderson is a wealthy widow, not an outlaw. She is not going to hire gunmen." "Maybe not," Miguel said quietly. "But grief can make people do strange things, and money can make people do stranger ones." Joanna felt the fragile hope she had built up over the past day begin to crumble. "I should leave. I will not bring violence to your door, Isaac. You have been too kind for me to repay you that way." "You are not going anywhere," Isaac said firmly. "This is just Thornton stirring up trouble because I made him look like a fool yesterday. Even if Mrs. Henderson were inclined to hire men to harm you, which I doubt, she has no idea where you are." "She knew I was on the stage to Fort Bowie," Joanna pointed out, "and from there you could have gone in any direction. North, south, east, west. You could be in Santa Fe or Tucson or halfway to California by now." Isaac's logic was sound, but Joanna could see the concern in his eyes despite his confident words. Miguel cleared his throat. "I will ride the property lines tonight. Make sure there are no strangers lurking about. Tom can do the same tomorrow night, just to be safe." "I appreciate that," Isaac said. He turned to Danny. "Did you get the supplies?" "Yes, sir. They are loaded on my horse." "Good. Help Miguel put them away, then you two can take the rest of the day to mend that stretch of fence in the east pasture." It was clearly a dismissal, and both men took it as such, leading their horses toward the barn. Isaac turned to Joanna. "I meant what I said. You are not leaving. I do not want to put you in danger. I have been in danger since the day I decided to ranch in Apache territory." "This is no different," he paused. "Actually, that is not true. This is different because I chose it. I chose to help you, knowing there might be consequences. I do not regret that choice, and I will not be bullied into changing it." Joanna felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the Arizona heat. "You are a stubborn man, Isaac Yates, so I have been told." A small smile played at his lips. "Is that fresh bread I smell?" "It should be just about ready to come out of the oven." They went inside together, and Joanna pulled 2 golden loaves from the oven. The smell filled the house, rich and yeasty and comforting. Isaac's expression was almost comical in its delight. "I have not had fresh bread in months," he admitted. "Then you are in for a treat." Joanna cut thick slices while the bread was still warm and spread them with butter from the cold box. They ate standing at the counter, and the simple pleasure of good food shared in good company felt like a small miracle. Over the next few days, Joanna settled into a routine. She woke early to prepare breakfast for Isaac and the hands, then spent her mornings cleaning, cooking, and working through the accounts. Afternoons, she often helped Isaac with correspondence, teaching him how to structure business letters in a way that sounded professional without being stiff or overly formal. Isaac proved to be a quick study. He was intelligent despite his lack of formal education, and he had a dry wit that often caught her by surprise. They fell into an easy rhythm, working together in the evenings after the day's ranch work was done, going over the books and planning for the future. "You have done more in 4 days than I managed in 3 months, Isaac said one evening, looking over the newly organized ledgers. "I can actually see where my money is going now." "You were not doing badly," Joanna assured him. "You just needed a system, and possibly better handwriting." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Mrs. Patterson used to say the same thing. She tried to teach me proper penmanship, but I fear I am a hopeless case. Not hopeless, just in need of practice." Joanna demonstrated how to form letters more clearly, her hand guiding his across the page. She was acutely aware of the warmth of his skin, the way his breath stirred her hair as he leaned close to see what she was writing. She pulled away quickly, reminding herself that Isaac was her employer, her protector, but nothing more. He had helped her out of kindness, not because he had any personal interest in her. She needed to maintain professional boundaries, no matter how easy it would be to let herself feel something more, but it was becoming harder to remember those boundaries. Isaac was unlike any man she had known. He treated her with respect, but not the distant courtesy most men showed women they considered beneath them socially. He valued her opinions, laughed at her occasional jokes, and seemed genuinely interested when she spoke about her life before Tombstone. "What made you become a governess?" he asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. It had become a habit, this quiet time before supper when the heat of the day had passed and the desert came alive with evening sounds. "Necessity," Joanna said honestly. "When my mother died, I was 16 and alone. I had an education, which was more than many girls could claim, but no money and no family. A governess position offered room, board, and a respectable way to support myself. Did you enjoy it? Joanna considered the question. Parts of it. I liked teaching, watching children's faces light up when they understood something new. But I was never part of the family, always somewhere between servant and equal. It was a lonely existence. I understand lonely, Isaac said quietly. I left Kansas 5 years ago because I wanted to build something of my own, but there are times when I miss having family nearby, someone to talk to who knows your history. Why did you leave Kansas? My father wanted me to take over his farm, but I wanted to ranch. We fought about it for years. Finally, I realized I was never going to be happy living the life he had planned for me, so I saved my money and headed west. He paused. We parted on bad terms. I have written a few times, but he has never written back. My sister Sarah does, though. She is the one who keeps me informed about family matters. I am sorry, Joanna said. That must be difficult. It is what it is. Isaac shrugged, though she could see the old hurt in his eyes. Sometimes choosing your own path means leaving others behind. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to the deep blue of twilight. Joanna felt a sense of peace she had not experienced in longer than she could remember. Despite the uncertainty of her situation, despite the threats that might or might not be lurking on the horizon in this moment, she felt safe. A week passed without incident. Then another. Joanna began to relax, to believe that maybe Mayor Thornton's warnings had been nothing but fear-mongering, that Mrs. Henderson's grief had not driven her to extremes. She should have known better. It was Miguel who brought the news. He rode in one afternoon, his horse lathered and his face grim. Isaac was working on repairing a fence near the house, and Joanna was hanging laundry. Both of them stopped what they were doing when they saw Miguel's expression. "We have got company coming," Miguel said without preamble. "I was checking the southern property line and saw dust on the horizon. 4 riders, maybe 5, coming this way. They are not moving like honest travelers." Isaac's expression hardened. "How far out? Hour, maybe less." "Could be anyone," Isaac said, but his tone suggested he did not believe that. "Could be," Miguel agreed. "But I have got a feeling in my gut that says otherwise." Isaac turned to Joanna. "Go inside. Stay away from the windows." "If this is about me, I should be here," Joanna protested. "If this is about you, then I need to handle it without worrying about a stray bullet finding you." Isaac's voice was firm but not unkind. "Please, Joanna, let me deal with this." Reluctantly, she went inside, though she positioned herself where she could see out through a crack in the door. Isaac sent Miguel to get Tom and Danny, then retrieved a rifle from inside the house. He checked it with the practiced ease of someone who knew firearms, then took up a position on the porch. The wait was agonizing. Joanna watched the horizon, and slowly, 4 riders materialized from the heat shimmer. They rode directly toward the ranch, making no attempt at subtlety or stealth. As they drew closer, Joanna could make out details. 4 men, all armed, all with the hard look of men accustomed to violence. The leader was a tall man with a scar running down one cheek. He reined in his horse about 20 yards from the porch. "This the Yates ranch," he called out. "It is," Isaac said. "State your business." "We are looking for a woman, Joanna Redfield. We were told she might be here." "Who told you that?" The scarred man smiled, the expression cold. "Does not matter who told us. What matters is whether you are going to hand her over peaceful-like, or if we are going to have trouble." "Miss Redfield is under my protection and employment," Isaac said, his voice steady. "She is not going anywhere. That is unfortunate." The man shifted in his saddle, his hand moving closer to the gun at his hip. "See, we have got a contract. Mrs. Henderson in Tombstone wants Miss Redfield brought back to face justice. She is willing to pay good money for that to happen. There is no justice to face. The court in Tombstone already cleared her. Mrs. Henderson does not see it that way. She sees a woman who killed her son and then ran away. She wants that woman to pay. The scarred man's eyes were flat, emotionless. Now we can do this easy or hard. Your choice. Miguel, Tom, and Danny had positioned themselves at strategic points around the yard, all armed. The odds were even, 4 against 4, but Joanna knew that being even was not the same as being good. "You are not taking her," Isaac said. "And if you try, you will find that this ranch is well defended." 4 against 4, the scarred man observed. "But we are professionals. You are just ranchers playing at being gunmen." "Try us and find out," Miguel said, his rifle aimed squarely at the leader. The tension stretched tight as a bowstring. Joanna's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run out to surrender herself to prevent bloodshed, but she knew Isaac would never forgive her for that. More than that, she knew that these men had no intention of taking her back for trial. Mrs. Henderson wanted revenge, and these men were the instruments of that revenge. The standoff might have ended in violence if not for the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Everyone turned to see a group of 6 soldiers riding toward the ranch from the direction of Fort Bowie. They wore the blue uniforms of the U.S. cavalry, and their presence changed the entire dynamic. The soldiers reined in, taking in the scene with trained eyes. The officer in charge, a lieutenant with a stern face, looked from the 4 strangers to Isaac. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem, Lieutenant," the scarred man said quickly. "We were just leaving." "That is not what it looked like to me," the lieutenant said. "It looked like you were threatening these people. A misunderstanding." "I see." The lieutenant's tone suggested he saw through the lie completely. "Then you will not mind if my men escort you off this property and out of the area, just to make sure there are no more misunderstandings." The scarred man's jaw tightened, but he was smart enough to know when he was beaten. 4 against 4 was one thing. 4 against 10 was suicide. "We are going." "Good." The lieutenant nodded to his men who formed up around the 4 strangers. "And gentlemen, if I see you in this territory again, I will assume you are here to cause trouble and I will respond accordingly." The message was clear. The 4 men turned their horses and rode away, flanked by soldiers. The lieutenant remained behind, dismounting and approaching the porch. "Mr. Yates, I presume?" "Yes, sir." Isaac lowered his rifle but did not set it aside. "Lieutenant James Franklin, I apologize for the trouble. One of my scouts reported seeing suspicious riders in the area, and given the recent talk in Fort Bowie about potential threats to your ranch, I thought it prudent to investigate." He glanced toward the house, where Joanna still stood half hidden by the door. "I assume that is Miss Redfield." Joanna stepped out onto the porch, seeing no point in hiding now. "I am. The Army has no interest in civilian disputes, Miss Redfield, but we do have an interest in maintaining peace in this territory. Mrs. Henderson may have money and influence, but she does not have the right to hire mercenaries to extract private justice." The lieutenant's expression softened slightly. "You were cleared by a legal court. That should be the end of the matter." "I wish Mrs. Henderson saw it that way," Joanna said quietly. "I will be sending a report to my commanding officer, and he will be contacting the authorities in Tombstone. If Mrs. Henderson attempts to send more men after you, she will find herself facing charges of her own." Lieutenant Franklin settled his hat more firmly on his head. "In the meantime, I suggest you stay close to the ranch. The territory is not safe for anyone right now, but especially not for someone being actively hunted." "Understood," Isaac said. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Your timing was impeccable." "Pure coincidence, but I am glad we could help." Franklin remounted his horse. If you have any more trouble, send word to the fort. We may not be able to provide constant protection, but we will do what we can." After the soldiers left, Isaac finally set down his rifle. His hands, Joanna noticed, were steady, but there was a tightness around his eyes that spoke of the tension he had been holding. "You should have let me go to them," Joanna said. "Those men could have killed you, or they could have killed you and claimed it happened while resisting arrest." Isaac turned to face her. "Did you really think I would just hand you over to armed strangers who clearly had no legal authority? I thought you might value your life more than that of a woman you barely know. Then you thought wrong." Isaac stepped closer, his blue-gray eyes intense. "I know enough about you to know you do not deserve what Mrs. Henderson is trying to do to you. I know you are brave and smart and capable. I know that the world has treated you unfairly, and I will be damned if I contribute to that unfairness by abandoning you when you need help." Joanna felt tears sting her eyes. "Why do you care so much?" Isaac was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Because somewhere along the past 2 weeks, you stopped being just my housekeeper. You became important to me. You became someone I look forward to seeing every morning and talking to every evening. You became someone whose happiness matters to me." The confession hung in the air between them. Joanna's breath caught in her throat. She had felt the connection growing between them, but she had told herself it was one-sided, that Isaac was simply being kind. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "But I should not. You are my employer, and I am a woman with a ruined reputation. I have nothing to offer you except trouble." "You have offered me more in 2 weeks than I have had in 5 years, Isaac said. "You have made this house a home. You have made me laugh, made me think, made me want to be better than I am." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her hand. "I am not asking you to make any promises or decisions right now. I am just telling you how I feel so you know that you are not alone in this." Joanna looked down at their joined hands, his rough and calloused, hers smaller and marked with small scars from domestic work. They fit together perfectly. "I am afraid," she admitted. "I am afraid that caring about you will bring more danger to your door. I am afraid that I will lose this, the first real home I have had since my mother died. I am afraid of hoping for something that might be taken away." "Fear is reasonable given what you have been through," Isaac said. "But do not let fear stop you from living. I learned that when I left Kansas. Sometimes you have to take a risk to find something worth having." He lifted her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. Then he released her and stepped back, giving her space. "Think about what I said. There is no rush. Whatever happens, you have a place here as long as you want it, whether that is as my housekeeper or as something more." He picked up his rifle. "I am going to do a perimeter check with Miguel, make sure those men actually left the area. Will you be all right alone for a bit?" Joanna nodded, not trusting her voice. Isaac headed toward the barn and she watched him go, her mind whirling with everything he had said. That night, after supper, Joanna sat on her bed and took stock of her situation with clear eyes. 2 weeks ago she had been homeless, hunted, with no prospects and no hope. Now she had a roof over her head, meaningful work, and a man who had just confessed he cared for her. More than that, she cared for him. She had been fighting the feeling, telling herself it was gratitude or relief manifesting as affection. But that was a lie. What she felt for Isaac was real. She admired his strength, his kindness, his quiet integrity. She loved the way he listened when she spoke, really listened as if her thoughts mattered. She loved his dry humor, the way he pushed himself to learn new things despite his discomfort, the gentle way he treated his animals. She loved him. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home after a long journey. She loved Isaac Yates, and unless she had completely misread the look in his eyes, he loved her too. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Over the next few days, Joanna and Isaac circled around each other like planets caught in each other's orbit, drawn together but not quite touching. Their conversations remained easy, their work together productive, but there was a new awareness between them, a charge in the air like the moment before a thunderstorm. A week after the confrontation with the hired men, a letter arrived from Fort Bowie. Lieutenant Franklin had been true to his word. His commanding officer had contacted the territorial marshal in Tombstone, who in turn had paid a visit to Mrs. Henderson. She had been warned in no uncertain terms that hiring men to pursue Joanna would result in criminal charges against her. The territorial marshal's letter to Isaac, included with Lieutenant Franklin's note, stated that Mrs. Henderson had agreed to cease her pursuit in exchange for the matter being dropped. "It is over," Isaac said, reading the letter aloud to Joanna. "She is calling off her vendetta." Joanna felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had not fully realized she was carrying. "Do you believe it?" "I believe she is smart enough to know that the law was not on her side, and that continuing would only make things worse for her." Isaac folded the letter carefully. "I also believe that Lieutenant Franklin made it clear that any further attempts would result in Army intervention, which is something even a wealthy widow wants to avoid." "So I am free," Joanna said wonderingly. "Truly free. You were always free. The people hunting you were never going to catch you as long as you were under my roof." Isaac smiled. "But yes, now you are free from the threat of being hunted. You can go into town without fear. You can contact other potential employers if you want. You can do whatever you choose." There was a question in his words, an unspoken inquiry about what she would choose now that she had options again. Joanna met his eyes. "What if what I choose is to stay here? Not as someone hiding from danger, but as someone who wants to be here." "Then I would be the happiest man in the Arizona Territory," Isaac said quietly. She crossed the space between them, her heart hammering. "I love you, Isaac. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was too soon or too complicated, but I cannot help it. You are the best man I have ever known, and I love you." Isaac's face transformed, joy lighting his features from within. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses. "Joanna Redfield, I have loved you since the day you stood up to the mayor and refused to be ashamed of defending yourself. I have loved you more with each passing day. You are brilliant and brave and beautiful, and I do not deserve you, but I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held all the promise of the future. Joanna melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt completely, utterly safe. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me. Not because you need protection or a place to live, but because we love each other and we want to build a life together." "Yes," Joanna said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the Fort Bowie church. Reverend Michaels, who had turned Joanna away when she first arrived, officiated with genuine warmth, having been thoroughly chastised by his wife for his earlier behavior. Miguel served as Isaac's best man, and the wife of one of the fort's officers stood up with Joanna. The town's attitude toward Joanna had shifted dramatically once word spread that the territorial marshal had cleared her and warned Mrs. Henderson off. People who had wanted her gone now welcomed her as Mrs. Isaac Yates. Joanna found the hypocrisy galling, but she tried to be gracious for Isaac's sake. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a coming together of two people who had found in each other what they had been seeking without quite knowing it. Isaac made love to her with reverence and care, and Joanna gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. Afterward, lying in Isaac's arms in the bed they would now share, Joanna felt tears slip down her cheeks. "What is wrong?" Isaac asked immediately, concern in his voice. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right, and I keep waiting for it to be taken away." She turned to face him. "I have never been this happy, and it frightens me." Isaac brushed the tears from her cheeks. "I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life in the territory is hard and there will be challenges. But I can promise that whatever comes, we will face it together. You are not alone anymore, Joanna. You have me and I have you, and that is worth more than all the gold in California." "I know," she whispered. "I am just not used to good things lasting." "Then let me teach you," Isaac said, kissing her softly. "Let me teach you that love does last, that happiness is not something to fear, that you deserve every good thing this life has to offer." True to his word, Isaac spent the following months and years proving his love in countless ways, large and small. He supported Joanna when she decided to start a school for the ranch children in the area, teaching reading and writing in a small room they added to the house. He stood beside her when some of the more traditional townspeople objected to a woman with her history teaching their children, and he smiled with pride when those objections faded as Joanna's skill and dedication became clear. Joanna, in turn, helped Isaac expand the ranch. Her skill with accounts and correspondence attracted buyers from as far away as California, and the Yates ranch prospered. She worked beside Isaac during roundups and branding, earning the respect of the hands through her competence and her willingness to do whatever needed doing. Their first child, a son they named Matthew, was born in the spring of 1880. Isaac was terrified through the entire labor, pacing outside the bedroom while the doctor and midwife attended to Joanna. When he finally held his son, tears streamed down his face. "He is perfect," Isaac said in wonder. "You are perfect. I love you both so much." Joanna, exhausted but radiant, smiled up at him. "We made a person, Isaac, a whole new person who is part you and part me." Matthew proved to be a healthy, happy baby who grew into a sturdy toddler. He was followed 2 years later by a daughter, Elizabeth, who had her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn determination. Then came another son, Samuel, in 1884, completing their family. The ranch continued to thrive. Isaac took on more hands as the herd grew, building additional bunkhouses and improving the property. Joanna's school expanded, and eventually the town built a proper schoolhouse and hired Joanna as the official teacher, a position she held with pride. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Joanna up to a hill overlooking the ranch. They sat together watching the sun set, just as they had done so many evenings on the porch all those years ago. "You ever regret it?" Isaac asked. "Staying here, marrying me, building this life?" Joanna looked at him in surprise. "Never, not once. Why would you ask that?" "Because you could have done anything, gone anywhere once Mrs. Henderson called off her pursuit. You could have gone to California, started fresh where no one knew your history. Instead, you stayed here and married a simple rancher." "You are not simple," Joanna said firmly. "You are the most extraordinary man I have ever known, and this life we have built together is more than I ever dreamed possible when I stepped off that stagecoach in Fort Bowie." She took his hand. "You gave me more than a home, Isaac. You gave me a family, a purpose, a future. You gave me yourself. I could never regret that." Isaac pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned brilliant colors. Down below, they could see their children playing near the house, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Miguel was driving the last of the cattle in from the far pasture. Smoke rose from the chimney where the new housekeeper they had hired was preparing supper. "I love you," Isaac said. "I loved you then, and I love you now, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "And I love you," Joanna replied. "Thank you for protecting me that day. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for giving me a reason to hope again." "Thank you for staying," Isaac said. "Thank you for taking a chance on a stubborn cowboy who did not know how to properly write a business letter." Joanna laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "You still do not write them properly. That is why you have me." They sat together until the stars came out, then walked hand in hand back to the house, to the life they had built, to the family they had created, to the love that had saved them both. Years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and milestones. Matthew grew tall and strong, inheriting his father's love of ranching and his mother's quick mind. He took naturally to working cattle and managing men, and by the time he was 18, he was Isaac's right hand in running the Yates ranch. Elizabeth proved to be passionate about teaching, following in her mother's footsteps. She helped Joanna at the school, showing patience and creativity with the younger students. She had a particular gift for reaching children others had written off as slow or difficult, seeing potential where others saw only problems. Samuel, the youngest, had inherited a bit of wildness from both parents. He loved the outdoors, loved exploring the desert, and developed a deep fascination with the Apache people who occasionally traded at Fort Bowie. He learned their language and their ways, becoming a bridge between the ranch and the native communities in a way that benefited everyone. Isaac's sister Sarah finally came to visit in 1888, bringing with her the news that their father had passed away. She also brought a letter he had written before his death, one he had been too stubborn to send while living. Isaac read it alone in his study, and Joanna found him there an hour later with tears streaming down his face. "He was proud of me," Isaac said, his voice breaking. "All those years I thought he hated me for leaving. But he wrote that he understood, that he was proud of what I had built, that he wished he had been man enough to tell me so while he still could." Joanna held him while he grieved, for the years lost to pride and stubbornness, for the father he would never get to reconcile with in life, for the words that had come too late. But there was also healing in that grief, a closing of old wounds. Sarah stayed for 3 months, falling in love with the Arizona territory and the life her brother had built. She met and married one of the newer ranchers in the area, settling permanently near Fort Bowie. It brought Isaac great joy to have family close again, to have his sister's children grow up alongside his own. The town of Fort Bowie continued to grow and change. The military presence gradually decreased as the Apache Wars ended and the territory became more settled. The town incorporated, elected a new mayor when Thornton retired, and began to take on the trappings of civilization with regular mail service, a telegraph office, and eventually, talk of the railroad coming through. Through all these changes, the Yates Ranch remained a constant, a testament to hard work, smart management, and the love of two people who had found each other against all odds. On their 20th anniversary, Joanna and Isaac threw a party that brought together everyone who mattered in their lives. The ranch hands, past and present. The teachers from Joanna's school. The merchants from town who had once refused to serve her but now counted her as a friend. Sarah and her family. Their own children, now grown into remarkable young adults. Miguel, graying but still strong, raised a toast. To the boss and the lady who saved him from his own terrible cooking. May you have 20 more years together, and may they be as blessed as the first 20. Laughter and cheers filled the night air. Joanna leaned into Isaac's embrace, looking around at all the faces illuminated by lantern light, all the lives that had been touched by their story. "Can you believe it?" she whispered to Isaac. 20 years ago, I was sitting on a bench in Fort Bowie with nothing but a carpet bag and a death sentence hanging over my head. And now look at all this. "I can believe it," Isaac said, "because I know how hard we have worked for it, how much we have invested in building something good and lasting." He turned her to face him. "And I know that the best decision I ever made was standing up to that pompous mayor and declaring that you would stay under my protection. The best decision I ever made was believing you meant it," Joanna replied. They danced together under the stars, surrounded by love and laughter, and if the road to this moment had been hard, well, that only made the joy of arriving all the sweeter. The years rolled on with the inexorable quality of time, bringing changes both welcome and difficult. Matthew married a young woman named Catherine from Tucson, and they gave Isaac and Joanna their first grandchildren, twin boys who were the absolute terror and delight of the entire ranch. Elizabeth married a fellow teacher, a gentle man named Robert who shared her passion for education, and together they opened a school in Phoenix that became known for its progressive methods. Samuel, to no one's surprise, struck out on his own path. He spent years living among the Apache, learning their ways, and eventually became a translator and mediator between the tribal communities and the territorial government. His work helped prevent several conflicts and improved relations throughout the region. Isaac's hair turned silver, and lines deepened around his eyes from years of squinting into the Arizona sun. But his back remained straight, his hands steady, and his love for Joanna as strong as ever. He still kissed her good morning every day, still held her hand during sunset, still looked at her as if she were the most beautiful woman in the world. Joanna's auburn hair showed threads of white, and her hands bore the marks of a life of hard work. But her green eyes remained bright, her mind sharp, and her capacity for love seemed to grow with each passing year. She still taught, though now at the larger school in town where her reputation had gone from infamous to legendary. Former students came from across the territory to thank her for believing in them when no one else would. They celebrated their 30th anniversary quietly, just the two of them on the porch of the house they had shared for 3 decades. The ranch spread out before them, larger and more prosperous than Isaac had ever dreamed in those early struggling years. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Joanna asked. "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met," Isaac said. "Standing there bloodied and hunted, refusing to be ashamed of surviving. I remember thinking you were either the kindest man alive or completely insane for helping me." Joanna smiled at the memory. "Possibly both. Definitely both," Isaac agreed with a laugh. "Miguel thought I had lost my mind. He pulled me aside the next day and asked if I really knew what I was doing, taking in a woman the whole town wanted gone. What did you tell him? That I was following my gut, and my gut said you were worth fighting for." Isaac squeezed her hand. "Best decision I ever made, trusting that instinct." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in familiar shades of orange and purple. After all these years, the Arizona sunsets had never lost their power to move Joanna. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from the despair of that first day in Fort Bowie to this moment of perfect contentment. "I want you to know something," Joanna said quietly. "Even knowing everything that would happen, all the struggles and challenges, if I could go back to that day on the stagecoach, I would not change a single thing. Every hardship led me here to you, to this life, and I would live through all of it again in a heartbeat." Isaac turned to her, his blue-gray eyes suspiciously bright. "You have given me more than you know, Joanna. Before you came, this was just a ranch, just a business I was building. You made it a home. You made it matter. We made it together, Joanna corrected. Everything good here. We built it side by side. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, their grandchildren's laughter drifted up from near the barn where Matthew was teaching them to rope fence posts. The sound made both Joanna and Isaac smile. Legacy, Isaac said softly. That is what we have built. Not just a successful ranch, but a family, a community, a life that will continue long after we are gone. Our great-grandchildren will play in this yard, Joanna said with certainty. They will hear stories about how their great-grandfather stood up to an entire town to protect a woman he barely knew. They will learn that sometimes love means taking a stand, even when it is difficult. And they will hear about how their great-grandmother faced down hired guns and town councils, and every obstacle life threw at her with grace and courage, Isaac added. They will know that strength is not just physical, that survival is not just about enduring but about thriving despite the odds. They sat together until the night grew cool, then moved inside to the warmth of the house that had witnessed so much of their life together. The bedroom they shared held decades of memories, from passionate early days to the comfortable intimacy of long marriage. They prepared for bed with the easy familiarity of people who had shared this routine for 30 years. As they lay together in the darkness, Joanna rested her head on Isaac's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she said, the words as true now as they had been when she first spoke them. "I love you too," Isaac replied, his arms tightening around her. "Always have, always will." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, two souls who had found their home in each other, two lives that had merged into something greater than either could have been alone. The years that followed were gentler, slower. Isaac gradually handed over more of the ranch operations to Matthew, though he still rode out most days to check on things and offer advice. Joanna retired from teaching at 65, but she continued to tutor struggling students in her home, unable to completely give up the work she loved. They traveled some, visiting Elizabeth in Phoenix and Samuel in his work across the territory. They took a trip to Kansas to see the farm where Isaac had grown up, making peace with his past and honoring the memory of his father. They visited San Francisco, marveling at the bustling city and the ocean that seemed to go on forever. But they always returned to the Yates ranch, to the home they had built, to the land they loved, to the life they had created together. On a warm spring evening in 1898, as they celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and the newest addition of great-grandchildren, Joanna looked at Isaac across the crowded room and felt her heart swell with gratitude. 40 years since she had stepped off that stagecoach, terrified and alone. 40 years since a cowboy had looked at a desperate woman and seen someone worth protecting. 40 years of love, struggle, joy, and growth. Isaac caught her eye and smiled, the same warm smile that had made her feel safe all those years ago. He made his way through the crowd to her side, taking her hand and leading her out to the porch where their story had truly begun. "Thank you," Joanna said, "for everything. For protecting me, for loving me, for building this beautiful life with me." "Thank you for staying," Isaac replied. "For choosing me, for choosing this life, for making every day an adventure worth living." They kissed, soft and sweet, while their family celebrated inside. The desert night spread out around them, vast and beautiful, holding all the promise of tomorrow and all the memories of yesterday. And in that moment, standing on the porch of the home they had built together, Joanna Redfield Yates knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, held in the arms of the man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. The man who had shown her that sometimes the end of one story is simply the beginning of something infinitely better. The town that had once wanted her gone by morning had become her home. The cowboy who had declared she would stay under his protection had become her husband, her partner, her truest love, and the life she thought she had lost forever had transformed into something more wonderful than any dream. It was, in every sense that mattered, a perfect happy ending and a beautiful new beginning, all woven together into the rich tapestry of a life well lived, and a love that would endure long after the final sunset faded into night.